Hey guys, tonight we journey back in time, not to witness grand battles or royal intrigue, but to slip into the worn slippers of a young scholar in Qing Dynasty, China. Imagine, if you will, the faint smell of ink, the rustle of bamboo scrolls, and the almost crushing weight of expectation pressing down on your shoulders. You're surrounded by books, stacks and stacks of them, the wisdom of centuries crammed into dense, intricate characters. Outside your small window, the world hums along, but in here, your world is the text, your future, a path paved with perfectly recalled Confucian classics. This isn't just studying for a test, it's preparing for your entire existence, the single ladder out of obscurity and into a life of meaning. Off? Well, not starving. Let's be honest, the odds are astronomically against you. You probably once survived this particular climb with your sanity or your social life intact. Think of it as trying to win the lottery, but instead of buying a ticket, you've spent 20 years memorizing the phone book backwards. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really does help the channel find more people like you who appreciate these little drifts into the past. And hey, if you're feeling social, drop your current location and what time it is where you are in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see where everyone's tuning in from as we explore these shared human experiences across the ages. Now, dim the lights. My baby, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are a scholar, perhaps in your late teens, perhaps a hopeful 20-something, or maybe, just maybe, you're already seeing flecks of gray at your temples, still chasing this singular, all-consuming dream. The air in your study is thick with the scent of old paper, a hint of mildew from the rainy season, and then the slightly sweet aroma of the cheap oil in your lamp. This dream, this imperial dream, is the BKJU, the civil service examination system, in the vast, sprawling empire of the Qing, which held sway from the mid-17th century well into the early 20th. This is your only real shot. There's no tech startup you can launch, no viral dance you can perfect to achieve fame and fortune. It's all about the brush, the ink, and the endless text. The Qing Dynasty, like so many before it, built its entire administrative backbone on this system, a practice refined over an astonishing 1,300 years, designed to pluck the brightest minds from across the land to serve the emperor, or at least that was the theory. This isn't just a theory, career path. It's a complete identity transformation. To pass is to become a Jinshi, an advanced scholar, a title that flings open the doors to government posts, to prestige, to a life where your words carry weight and your family enjoys a status undreamt of by common folk. Imagine the relief, the sheer exaltation of seeing your name on that red paper list of successful candidates. Your parents, who have likely poured every spare copper coin into your education, would weep with joy. Your village, your entire county, would celebrate you as a local hero. You'd be feasted, paraded, and suddenly find yourself very popular with matchmakers representing eligible and suddenly very interested young women from prominent families. You could provide for your aging parents, ensure your siblings are well married, and even bring honor to your ancestors, their names perhaps inscribed on a commemorative arch. The ultimate glow-up Qing Dynasty edition, but the ultimate flip side. The flip side is a cold, dark abyss. To fail, especially repeatedly, is to invite shame not just upon yourself, but upon your entire lineage. Those years of sacrifice, of poring over texts while your peers were farming or learning a trade, could all amount to nothing. The whispers, the pitying looks, the quiet financial ruin of a family that bet everything on your intellect. That's a heavy burden for your young shoulders to bear. And the competition is staggering. Talking tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of hopefuls like you, all vying for a precious few hundred, or even just a few dozen, actual government positions in any given exam cycle. Historians still argue whether the examination system primarily fostered meritocracy, truly allowing talent to rise regardless of background, or if it simply perpetuated the dominance of established gentry families who could afford the decades of intensive private tutoring required. For you, sitting in your drafty room, this academic debate is less pressing than the immediate terror of not measuring up. The path is a grueling ascent, a series of increasingly difficult examinations. First, the local or county exams. Pass those, and thus, you're a I.M. Shenjuan, or government student, a minor distinction, a stepping stone, but it grants you certain privileges, like exemption from some taxes and labor service. It's like getting your learner's permit. You are not driving the imperial limousine yet, but at least you're legally on the road. Then come the provincial exams, held every 3 years. These are a major hurdle. Success here makes you a juran, a recommended man, qualified for minor official posts and, crucially, eligible for the metropolitan exams in Beijing. The metropolitan exams, also triennial, are the big league, and for the absolute creme de la creme, who pass GTFOs, there's the palace examination, sometimes overseen by the emperor himself. It is a pyramid scheme of intellectual prowess, and you're at the bottom, desperately trying to memorize enough Confucian commentary to hoist yourself up another level. You've heard the stories, of course, tales of men who started their studies as bright-eyed youths and were still taking the exams with trembling, liver-spotted hands in their 70s or even 80s. That's dedication, or perhaps a cautionary tale about not knowing when to quit and open a noodle stall instead. It's a quirky and rather sobering fact of the system. There was often no official age limit. As long as you could hold a brush and see the paper, you could, in theory, keep trying. This prospect, the idea of a lifetime spent in a cycle of hope and crushing disappointment, fuels a quiet dread within you. What if your memory isn't sharp enough? What if you misinterpret a crucial passage from the 4 books or the 5 classics? What if, after all this, you're just average? The thought is almost unbearable. This is why, beyond the rote memorization and the essay practice, another world of preparation begins to bloom in the shadowy corners of your mind. A world of whispered anxieties, of carefully observed omens, and the desperate hope for a little supernatural assistance. The pressure is immense, a silent screaming force that shapes your days and haunts your nights long before you even smell the scent of the examination hall. That imperial dream, the one that has you tethered to your study desk day in and day out, isn't just your own private aspiration. It's a colossal weight of expectation pressed upon you by virtually everyone you know, and even by those you don't. It's less a gentle nudge toward success and more like being the human cannonball in the family circus, with everyone betting their life savings on you, landing squarely in that tiny, distant net of officialdom. The pressure starts subtly, perhaps, with the proud gleam in your father's eye when you first recited a complex passage from the rare classic of poetry as a child, or the way your mother would set aside the choicest bits of food for you, the family's budding scholar. But as the year's budding scholar wear on and the exams loom closer, that gentle encouragement calcifies into a heavy, unspoken demand. Your family, bless their cotton socks, has likely made sacrifices that would make a modern reality TV show contestant blanch. They might have sold a precious plot of land, a family heirloom, or taken on extra work, all to afford the books, the paper, the ink, the lamp oil, and maybe, If they were truly ambitious, a tutor for you. That new robe you wear for important occasions probably cost your sister her dowry. That slightly better rate of rice you're encouraged to eat for brain power. It means thinner gruel for everyone else. They don't usually say these things outright, of course. It's more in the lingering glances, the hopeful sighs. The way your grandmother's prayers at the ancestral altar seem to get a little louder when you're within earshot. It's a classic guilt trip, ancient China style, and it's super effective. Then there's the wider community. If you show promise, your village or clan might also invest in you. Wealthier local gentry or benevolent merchant associations sometimes sponsored bright young men, seeing it as both a virtuous act and a sound investment. A successful scholar from their area meant prestige for the whole community, a voice in higher places. Someone who could advocate for local interests might be get that pesky irrigation canal fixed or argue for a tax reassessment after a bad harvest. So, when you walk through the village, you feel the eyes of your neighbors. They're not just seeing young Master Wu, they're seeing their collective hopes, their potential champion. No pressure, right? It's like your entire hometown has a fantasy football league, and you're their perpetual first-round draft pick, expected to deliver a championship season every single year. This societal expectation is deeply woven into the Confucian fabric of Qing society. The scholar official was the ideal, the pinnacle of a virtuous and useful life, to serve the state, to bring order and harmony through wise and ethical governance. This was the noblest calling. Merchants might be wealthy, soldiers might be brave, farmers might be the backbone of the economy, but it was the scholar, steeped in the ancient classics, who was believed to possess the moral compass and intellectual acuity to truly lead. This wasn't just about getting a good job. It was about fulfilling a profound ethical duty. And you, with your head full of Mencius and Sun Tzu, are supposed to embody this ideal. The sheer volume of what you need to know is enough to give anyone nightmares. The 4 books and the 5 classics, the absolute core of Confucian thought, candidates were expected to have memorized these texts, which, by conservative estimates, amounted to over 400,000 Chinese characters for the basic works alone. That's before you even get to the mountains of recognized commentaries, historical precedents, and philosophical interpretations you also need to master to formulate those perfect 8-legged essays. Imagine trying to memorize the entire internet, or perhaps, for a more anachronistic but equally daunting comparison, every single legal precedent and footnote in a modern law library. Your brain feels less like a nimble instrument of thought and more like an overstuffed attic crammed to the rafters with dusty pronouncements from sages who've been dead for millennia. Your only social life is with these long-dead commentators. And let me tell you, Zhu Si is not exactly a barrel of laughs. This relentless cramming, coupled with the endless stakes, creates a breeding ground for anxiety. Sleep offers little respite, often disturbed by fragmented phrases from the texts or nightmarish visions of stern-faced examiners with impossibly long fingernails. Your digestion is probably a mess. You jump at sudden noises. The fear of failure isn't just a rational concern. It's a gnawing creature that lives in your stomach, whispering insidious doubts. What if, on the day your mind goes blank? What if you get a question on that one obscure passage you skimmed? What if your calligraphy, painstakingly practiced, is deemed inelegant? These aren't just academic worries. They feel like existential threats. It's in this fertile ground of fear that the first tendrils of superstition begin to sprout, seeking purchase. If hard work alone might not be enough, then surely, there must be other ways to sway the cosmic balance in your favor. Quirky little habits start to form. Might be you find yourself always using the same chipped inkstone, the one you used when you pass that tough mock exam, or perhaps you avoid stepping on cracks in the paving stones on your way to your tutor's house. These are small things, almost unconscious at first. Some families, in their eagerness and anxiety, might even consult fortune tellers before you seriously embark on your studies or before a particularly critical exam. Imagine the added pressure if the local soothsayer, after much theatrical bone-throwing or coin-tossing, declares you destined for greatness. Thanks, mate, that really helps me relax. Conversely, a poor prophecy could cast a long fatalistic shadow. Scholars continue to debate the psychological toll this immense pressure cooker environment took on candidates, and how effectively traditional coping mechanisms, including these emergent superstitions, helped or hindered their actual performance. Did these beliefs provide a necessary psychological crutch, a way to manage overwhelming stress, or did they distract from the disciplined study required, adding another layer of irrational worry? For you, deep in the throes of it, such academic distinctions are meaningless. You just want to pass. You want the dream, not the nightmare. And as the time for the provincial exams draws nearer, this quiet desperation will begin to crystallize into more concrete beliefs and practices, a secret arsenal of hope against the crushing weight of expectation. The anxiety is no longer just a background hum. It's a constant companion, urging you to look for any sign, any advantage, any way to navigate the terrifying path ahead. The day finally arrives for you to leave the familiar, if somewhat suffocating, embrace of your hometown and begin the trek to the provincial capital. That pressure cooker prep you've endured for years now gets packed up along with your brushes, your carefully hearted paper, your precious inkstick, maybe even that chipped inkstone you've grown superstitious about, remembering that small success in a mock exam. You pack light in theory, just a few seminal texts for that last-minute, panic-induced cramming, though you know full well most books won't be allowed anywhere near the actual examination enclosure. Enough ink to potentially refloat a small section of the Imperial Navy, and a heart brimming with a potent cocktail of hope and existential dread. The farewells are a blur of tearful exhortations from your mother, stoic but heavy-handed pats on the back from your father, and a chorus of bring honor to us all from assorted relatives, neighbors, and that one slightly too enthusiastic village elder who seems to have appointed himself your personal hype man. Each well-wish, each reminder of their sacrifices, adds another invisible pound to your luggage. You smile, you bow, you promise to do your best, all the while a little voice in your head is screaming, "What if my best isn't good enough?" Depending on your family's means and the distance to the provincial capital, your journey could take days, weeks, or even months. If you're relatively well off, you might travel by a rickety mule cart, or perhaps share a cramped space on a river junk. The rhythmic creak of the timbers and the shouts of the boatmen, a constant soundtrack to your anxious thoughts. If you're less fortunate, it's Shank's pony for you. That is, your own 2 feet, trudging along dusty, rutted tracks that are less imperial highway and more a vague suggestion of a path where slightly fewer rocks have decided to congregate. The cost of travel alone is a significant burden, another source of worry. Every coin spent on a bowl of thin noodles at a roadside stall or a spot on the flea-ridden floor of an overcrowded inn is a coin that your family doesn't have. And the journey itself is fraught with more than just discomfort. Bandits are a real threat on lonely stretches of road, particularly interested in travelers who might be carrying silver for their expenses. Then there are the fraudsters, ready to prey on naive young scholars with tales of guaranteed pass elixirs or leaked exam questions for a modest fee. Of course, you've been warned about these charlatans, but in moments of profound self-doubt, their siren song can sound almost tempting. Illness is another constant companion on the road. Questionable water sources, unfamiliar food and food, general lack of sanitation can lead to debilitating bouts of sickness at the worst possible time. Imagine finally arriving at the capital, feverish and weak, days before the most important test of your life. The thought alone is enough to make you double-check the small pouch of medicinal herbs your mother pressed into your hand. It's during this arduous journey that your burgeoning anxieties and the superstitions you've started to cultivate truly begin to blossom. Every event, no blossom, matter how trivial, becomes a potential omen to be decoded. Did a magpie, that harbinger of good fortune, cross your path from left to right? Excellent. You allow yourself a small internal sigh of relief, a tiny uptick in optimism. Did you stumble over a loose stone just as you were thinking about a particularly difficult passage from the Book of Rites? A wave of cold dread washes over you. Clearly, this is a sign of impending difficulty, a cosmic warning. You might even backtrack and re-step that section of the path, just to be sure. Historians still argue whether the documented perils of off-travel for examination candidates were statistically average for the period, or if the heightened anxiety and focused purpose of these journeys made scholars particularly vulnerable or prone to reporting misfortune, their minds actively seeking out portents. A crow caws ominously from a withered tree as you pass. Is it commenting on your chances, or is it just a crow being a crow? Your brain, already overtaxed with classical allusions and ethical dilemmas, now has to double as an amateur augury department. A crow lands on your left. Bad omen. A crow lands on your right. Also bad, probably 2 crows. Don't even think about it. My BB, it's time to invest in a pocket guide to ornithomancy for dummies. Qing Dynasty edition. You listen to the snippets of conversation at inns, half expecting to overhear a phrase that will magically illuminate your fate. You analyze your dreams with the intensity of a seasoned psychoanalyst, searching for symbols of success or failure. A dream of flying might be good, signifying soaring to new heights. A dream of teeth falling out? Catastrophic. Some scholars, particularly those with a bit more to spend or a more ingrained belief in such practices, would take this to another level. It's a quirky but not uncommon tidbit that they might consult the official imperial almanac or a local temple oracle to choose an auspicious day and even an auspicious hour to begin their journey. They might select a specific gate of their city to depart from, one whose name or associated element is deemed favorable. Of travel might be avoided on certain days. It adds another layer of complexity to what is already a logistical challenge. But if it offers even a sliver of perceived control over the uncontrollable, you can bet someone would do it. As you get someone who would do it. Closer to the provincial capital, the roads become more congested. You're no longer a solitary figure wrestling with your thoughts and a recalcitrant mule. You're part of a growing stream of scholars, all heading towards the same daunting destination. The provincial capitals would swell enormously during these examination periods. Tens of thousands of candidates, along with their servants, if they could afford them, family members and opportunistic merchants, would descend upon the city, straining its resources to the breaking point. Finding accommodation becomes a frantic scramble. Prices for everything from lamp oil to noodles skyrocket. The air itself seemed to crackle with a mixture of scholarly intensity and an barely suppressed panic. You see the faces of your competitors, some calm and confident, others looking as haunted and sleep-deprived as you feel. And with every mile closer, the weight of that imperial dream and the fear of waking up from it, empty-handed, grows ever more palpable. Finally, after that omen-littered, bone-jarring journey you somehow survived, you stand before it, the provincial examination compound, the Gonjuan. It's less a welcoming hall of academia and more like a fortress designed to repel an army of particularly literate invaders. High walls, usually topped with intimidating watchtowers, stretch out as far as you can see. The main gates are a throng of controlled chaos, guards with stern faces and sharp halberds, anxious candidates milling about, servants fussing over their masters, meager supplies, and the general hubbub of a small city temporarily dedicated to the crushing of dreams, or the making of them, depending on your optimism levels, which, by now, are probably running on fumes. You clutch your small bundle of permitted items, your precious brushes, that carefully chosen inkstick, your trusty inkstone, yes, the chipped one, made the cut, nestled carefully, a water dropper, perhaps a small container for water, your official examination permit, and a heart that's doing a passable imitation of a hummingbird's wings. Before you can even think about finding your assigned spot in this labyrinth, there's the gauntlet of the entrance search. You knew this was coming, but the reality is still jarring. You're prodded, patted down, and your belongings are meticulously inspected. They're looking for any trace of ecta, contraband, cheat sheet, miniature book, notes, hidden in the lining of your clothes or the hollowed-out handle of a brush. You're searched so thoroughly, they're practically checking your DNA for hidden couplets. Hope you didn't think hiding that clever mnemonic for the 5 emperors in your nostril was a good idea. It's a humiliating process, stripping away a layer of your dignity before you even face the intellectual stripping to come. Once through, you're guided, or rather, herded along endless narrow alleyways, past row upon row upon row of tiny, identical cells. These are the infamous gaosha, the examination cells, and one of them will be your entire world for the next 3 days and 2 nights for each of the multiple sessions of the examination. The scale of it is dumbfounding. Thousands of these little boxes, stretching out in a grid that seems designed by someone with a particular fondness for human pigeonholes. Finally, a guard points you to a number. This is it. Your home, your prison, your potential launch pad to glory. You duck inside. Cell is perhaps too generous a term. It's more of a narrow slot carved out of brick and topped with a tile roof, typically about 6 feet deep, 3 feet wide, and might be 8 feet high. If you're tall, you can't even fully stretch out. Your cell is so small, you'd have to step outside to change your mind. Except, of course, once the exam begins, stepping outside is not an option. 2 rough wooden planks are provided. One, set lower, is meant to be your seat. The other, higher up, will serve as your desk during the day, and when repositioned with the lower plank, your bed at night. Ingenious, in a deeply uncomfortable sort of way. Other amenities include a ceramic waste bucket in the corner, whose fragrance will become intimately familiar to you over the coming days. And, well, that's pretty much it. 5-star, it ain't? -5 stars, would not recommend to my worst enemy, unless he was also taking this exam, in which case, welcome, friend. The starkness is absolute. There's no decoration, no comfort, nothing to distract from the task at hand, or more likely, from the swirling anxieties in your head. You carefully arrange your few belongings. The brushes here, the inkstone just so, the paper stacked neatly. Some candidates, you've heard, engage in quirky little rituals, even in this tiny space, meticulously arranging their tools for good fortune, or even tracing auspicious characters onto the walls with a finger, a small, silent plea to the universe. It's a tiny act of defiance, an attempt to impose some personal order onto this rigidly controlled and profoundly unsettling environment. Historians still debate the extent to which the notoriously harsh conditions within the examination cells were intentionally designed to test endurance and character, reflecting a belief that true scholars should be able to transcend physical discomfort, versus being a practical but unfortunate consequence of attempting to house and secure thousands of candidates simultaneously for days on end. As dusk begins to settle on this first day within the compound, often candidates entered the day before the exam truly began. A profound sense of isolation creeps in. You hear the distant clang of a gate, the coughs and nervous mutterings of your unseen neighbors in adjacent cells, the rhythmic footsteps of patrolling guards. The air grows cool, and perhaps a damp chill seeps up from the earth floor. You might be swatting at mosquitoes that seem to view scholars as a delicacy, or perhaps a rat, emboldened by the sudden influx of tenants, scurries past your doorway. Remember those ominous crows or that stumble stone on your journey. Those worries seem almost quaint now. Faced with the immediate, oppressive reality of this buck, you try to eat the dry rations you brought, but your stomach is a knot of tension. Sleep, when it eventually comes on your narrow wooden slab, fitful, punctuated by the strange symphony of the compound and the even stranger landscapes of your stress dreams. The silence, when it truly descends in the dead of night, is almost worse than the noise. It's a heavy, expectant silence, pregnant with the collective hopes and fears of thousands of souls, all balanced on the tip of a writing brush. You are utterly alone with your thoughts, your knowledge, and the crushing weight of that imperial dream. And this is just the beginning. Exam itself hasn't even started. You're just marinating in the atmosphere, a prelude to the real ordeal, and already the cell feels like it's shrinking. The walls closing in, a perfect incubator for every superstition you've ever entertained, locked away in your tiny brick and wood shoebox. The silence of the examination compound pressing in, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that all those years of diligent study, all those sacrificed family resources, all your own Herculean efforts to memorize the wisdom of ages, might still not be enough. That stark, isolating reality of the cell you confronted in Section 4 Act as a perfect crucible for spiritual yearning. When earthly efforts reach their limit, where else can you turn but to the heavens, or at least to the celestial bureaucracy you hope is listening? It's in these quiet, desperate moments, hunched over your plank desk, that you earnestly begin to call upon the deities you believe might just tip the cosmic scales in your favor. At the very top of your divine calling list is undoubtedly Wenchang Dijun, sometimes known simply as Wenchang Wang. He is Yun Ti, god of culture, literature, and most importantly for you right now, examinations. Think of him as the celestial minister of education, the ultimate patron saint of scholars. Temples dedicated to Wenchang are found all across the empire, and in the weeks leading up to the exams, they would have been bustling with hopeful candidates and their anxious families, the air thick with incense, smoke, and fervent prayers. Picture him now in your mind's eye, a dignified, serene figure, often depicted as a scholar official himself, perhaps holding a scroll or a receptor, embodying the very success you crave. You've likely visited his temple many times, leaving offerings of fruit or specially printed examination papers for the gods, promising charitable donations or the sponsoring of a small temple repair, should he look favorably upon your efforts. Now, in the cell, your prayers are silent, internal, desperate plea for clarity of thought, a nimble memory, and a touch of inspiration for those all-important essays. You've memorized over 400,000 characters. Surely Wenchang Dijun can spot you a few well-placed synonyms or a particularly elegant turn of phrase, right? Think of it as Divine Grammarly Qing Dynasty edition, often accompanying Wenchang, or revered powerfully in his own right, is Kui Xing. Now, Kui Xing is a fascinating figure, He is another star deity, a celestial being also deeply associated with scholarship and specifically with acing exams, literally with being the Ku, the chief, the top candidate. His iconography is often much more dynamic and, frankly, a bit more intimidating than the serene Wen Chang. Qing is frequently depicted as a demonic-looking figure, sometimes balancing on one foot on the head of a giant turtle or fish, symbolizing coming out on top, holding a writing brush in one hand and a measuring cup or dipper, representing the Big Dipper constellation with which he's associated, in the other. The story goes that he was a brilliant scholar, but was denied first place due to his ugly appearance, and in despair threw himself into the sea, only to be rescued by the mythical creature Qing, bless his fearsome stellar heart. Often looks like he wrestled a demon for his calligraphy brush and won. You kind of want that fierce, untamed scholarly energy on your side, especially when you're trying to stand out from thousands of other perfectly competent essay writers. Then there's Zhu Yi, the red-robed one, or he of the red coat. This deity is a bit more mysterious, a spectral assistant to the gods of examination. His role is particularly crucial during the fair grading process. It was believed that Zhu Yi would invisibly hover around the examiners, and if he approved of a candidate's paper, he would subtly nod his head, influencing the mortal graders to mark it favorably. Zhu Yi as well, hoping he'll be your unseen advocate when your painstakingly crafted essays are scrutinized by those stern-faced officials. You visualize your paper, hoping it catches his ethereal eye for all the right reasons. While Wen Chang, Qing, and Zhu Yi are the A-list celebrities of the examination pantheon, you wouldn't neglect others. Guan Yu, the valiant general from the Three Kingdoms period, deified as Guan Gong or Lordhood, and primarily a god of war, brotherhood, and loyalty. However, his unwavering integrity, righteousness, and even his reputed scholarly abilities, some traditions say he memorized the Zuo Zhuan Chronicle, made him an admirable figure for scholars too. A prayer to Lord Guan might be fortitude, for the strength to endure the grueling days and nights in the cell, and for the moral clarity to write essays that reflect true Confucian virtue, and, of course, you wouldn't forget your own ancestors, whose honor is so deeply intertwined with your success, nor the local Tudigong, earth god, of your hometown, or perhaps even the Chengwangshan city god of the provincial capital you're currently imprisoned in. Every little bit of divine goodwill helps. The methods of supplication within the cell itself have to be discreet. No grand prostrations or loud chanting here. That would attract the unwanted attention of the ever-vigilant guards. Subtlety is key. Perhaps you touch a tiny, almost invisible amulet sewn into the hem of your robe by your mother, a sliver of paper with the deity's name, or a single character representing luck that somehow made it past the searches. It's a quirky, desperate little act, that constant impulse to carry some tangible piece of hope. Or maybe you just close your eyes for a moment, focusing your intent, sending your pleas out into the ether. You might perform a mental kowtow, a bow in your mind. Historians still argue about the precise syncretic hierarchy of these examination deities in the popular religious practice of scholars, whether Wen Chang was always considered the supreme authority, or if figures like Qing, with his direct link to topping the list, held more specialized sway for certain coveted aspects of literary success and competitive triumph. These appeals to the divine are not just a passive hope. They are an active attempt to engage with forces that shape destiny, a way to reclaim some tiny measure of agency in a situation where you have very little. Whether these prayers genuinely brought supernatural aid is, of course, beyond our ability to verify, but the psychological comfort, The feeling that you weren't entirely alone in that oppressive little cell, that powerful beings were perhaps taking an interest in your plight, that at least was real. Or, conversely, the anxiety could deepen if you felt your prayers were inadequate, or if a bad omen from your journey resurfaced in your memory, making you wonder if you'd somehow offended one of these crucial spiritual allies. It's a double-edged sword, this reliance on the unseen. The examination has begun. The questions, dense with philosophical nuance and historical precedent, have been distributed. The rhythmic scratching of thousands of brushes on paper fills the air, a sound both industrious and terrifyingly competitive. But inside your tiny cell, your mind isn't solely focused on crafting the perfect eight-legged essay. That intense pressure, the isolation, and the desperate prayers you whispered to Wenchang Dijun and his celestial colleagues, remember them from Section 5, have turned your senses up to 11. You become a hypersensitive receiver, desperately scanning the mundane world for secret messages about your fate. The journey's omen spotting was just a warm-up. This is the main event in the theater of signs and portents. Every little thing becomes imbued with potential meaning. A sudden itch flares up on your right palm. Does that mean incoming wealth or success, as popular belief suggests? Or is it just dry skin from the cheap paper? You try desperately to recall the specific folklore. Your left ear suddenly starts ringing. Is that a good sign or a bad one? You think you remember hearing it, depends on the time of day. But the stress makes your memory fuzzy. A sneeze explodes out of you, shockingly loud in the relative quiet. Who is thinking of you? Is it your anxious mother back home? Or is it an ill omen, a sign that your vital routine is escaping? Your left eye begins to twitch uncontrollably. Good luck? Or is it bad luck? Quick, consult the frantic mental flowchart. Okay, historical precedent suggests left eye twitching before noon on a Tuesday while facing south. Probably means you're severely sleep-deprived and stressed. Dang it, not the cosmic validation you were hoping for. Outside your cell, the world continues, oblivious to your internal turmoil, but providing endless fodder for your interpretive efforts. A magpie lands briefly on the roof tiles nearby, lets out a cheerful chatter, and flies off. You exhale slowly, allowing yourself a tiny moment of relief. Magpies are almost universally considered auspicious. That has to be a good sign. Might be even a nod from Zhu Yi, the red-robed one. Then, later, you hear the distinct, mournful hoot of an owl. Even though it's daytime, a shiver runs down your spine. Owls are often seen as harbingers of misfortune or death. You try to block it out, focusing fiercely on your essay, but the sound lingers, a discordant note in your carefully constructed hope. Belief in omens and portents wasn't just some quirky habit of stressed-out scholars. It was deeply woven into the fabric of traditional Chinese society, from the emperor interpreting celestial phenomena, down to the farmer noticing the behavior of insects. The universe was widely believed to communicate its intentions through signs. Even foundational texts like the Yi Book of Rites discuss interpreting natural signs, lending classical weight to your current hypervigilance. Even inanimate objects in your cell seem to conspire to send you messages. A particularly persistent fly buzzes around your head. Annoying, yes. But also, flies are generally bad news associated with decay and uncleanliness. You swat at it, perhaps a little too aggressively. A butterfly, however, flutters gracefully into your cell through the small opening. Its colorful wings are a welcome sight, auspicious, a sign of transformation, beauty, might be, even passing the exam and emerging into a new life. Unless, of course, It decides to land squarely on your freshly inked essay and smears a crucial character. Then it's not a sign of transformation. It's just a beautifully patterned menace, actively sabotaging your future. You grind your ink stick on the inkstone, mixing it with water. Does the ink seem particularly black and lustrous today? Good sign, clarity and strength in your writing. Does it seem watery or dull? Bad sign, perhaps your arguments will lack substance. You dip your brush, and as you lift it, a single perfect drop falls onto your pristine paper. Disaster, a black mark upon your meticulously planned essay, and surely a black mark upon your fate, or might be just a clumsy moment fueled by caffeine withdrawal and existential terror. You try desperately, for a split second, to interpret the shape of the resulting ink blot. Does it resemble an auspicious character, a dragon, or does it look unnervingly like the character for fail? Might be it looks like a sentient tea cozy. Okay, the pressure is definitely getting to you. You carefully blot the spill, trying to rescue the page, and offer a silent apology to any deities you might have offended with your clumsiness. Some candidates, it's whispered, developed highly personalized systems for interpreting these micro-events within their cells. It's a quirky fringe tidbit, perhaps, but believable under the circumstances. Might be a certain pattern of cracks in the dried mud floor took on significance, or the way the candlelight flickered during a specific hour corresponded to the perceived quality of the sentence they were writing at that moment. It's like generating a personal based on the immediate claustrophobic environment, a desperate attempt to find order and predictability in the overwhelming randomness of the situation. Historians and anthropologists continue to debate the precise boundary between these deeply ingrained cultural beliefs in omens, shared by much of Qing society, and the situational, anxiety-driven hyper-interpretation that seems particularly prevalent in accounts of scholars under the extreme duress of the examinations. Was this just standard folk belief amplified by stress, or did the unique pressure cooker of the Ukteju generate its own specific intense brand of superstitious observation? For you, sweating in your cell, the distinction is academic. You're simply trying to navigate a sea of uncertainty, clinging to any perceived sign that you might, just might, make it safely to the shore of success. Every shadow, every sound, every insect becomes part of a vast, ongoing divination, a constant nerve-wracking dialogue with fate beyond just passively scrutinizing every twit and bird call for messages from the cosmos. As you were so diligently doing in Section 6, your anxiety now compels you into a more active role, the meticulous avoidance of anything that might bring bad luck. Welcome to the world of taboo terrors, where every word, action, and even potential encounter is weighed for its potential to sabotage your imperial dream. If omen reading is like trying to decipher a cryptic weather forecast, then observing taboos is like desperately trying not to step on any cracks in the cosmic pavement, lest you bring down a rain of misfortune upon your own head. The power of words, especially, takes on an almost talismanic quality. Given the Chinese language's abundance of homophones, words that sound alike but have different meanings, you become hyper-vigilant about your utterances and even your thoughts. The word for, risu, for instance, sounds dangerously like the word for death. So, if you happen to be on your fourth bowl of rice, or if the guard calls out cell number 44, a little jolt of unease goes through you. You certainly wouldn't want to accidentally say anything that sounds like fail, fall, finish, in a terminal sense, break, or ghost. If you need to express that you've completed a task, say, finishing your rather unappetizing meal, you might find yourself using awkward circumlocutions. You didn't finish your food. You successfully processed the provided sustenance or completed the nourishment intake sequence. It sounds a bit like you're a bureaucratic robot. But hey, if it keeps the bad linguistic vibes away, who cares? This avoidance of negative-sounding words is a mainstream historical fact, deeply embedded in Chinese culture, far beyond the examination halls, influencing everything from naming babies to choosing telephone numbers, even in modern times. Inside your cell, this extends to your actions. You wouldn't dream of sweeping the floor, no matter how dusty or strewn with the debris of your intellectual struggle. It becomes sweeping, you see, could symbolize sweeping away your good fortune, or even sweeping out your accumulated knowledge. So, you learn to coexist peacefully with the growing population of dust bunnies, some of which are starting to look like they could compete in the lower-level exams themselves. You're careful about how you handle your tools, breaking a brush, snapping an inkstick, or cracking your precious inkstone. These aren't just practical annoyances. They're dire portents, physical manifestations of a break in your luck. You remember that butterfly fluttered in earlier. Even if it were less auspicious, like a spider, whose meaning was often debated. Good luck if seen at night, bad during the day, or vice versa, depending on who you asked. You'd likely hesitate to kill it. Who knows what cosmic balance you might upset. Better to gently shoo it out, or just let it be. This web of prohibitions extends far beyond the confines of your cell, governing your behavior in the weeks and months leading up to the exam. You would have studiously avoided visiting graveyards or the homes of those who were seriously ill or in mourning, lest you absorb some inauspicious rain energy or the bad luck associated with death and sickness. Arguments and confrontations were to be shunned. Maintaining a harmonious state of mind was considered crucial for intellectual clarity and attracting good fortune. If you accidentally broke a mirror or a bowl at home, it would have been a source of significant family anxiety, likely followed by specific rituals to mitigate the bad luck. Then there are the unlucky encounters. You see, old man Chen, a scholar from a neighboring village who, bless his persistent heart, is rumored to have failed the provincial exam a staggering 17 times, ambling down the narrow alleyway between cell blocks. Suddenly, you develop an intense and urgent interest in inspecting a loose brick in the wall in the complete opposite direction. It's nothing personal against old man Chen. He might be a perfectly lovely fellow, but you just can't risk contamination by his failure cooties, for lack of a better term. This desire to avoid people perceived as unlucky is a powerful, if unspoken, force. Social historians debate whether the proliferation of these intricate taboos surrounding the examinations was primarily a bottom-up phenomenon, spontaneously generated by the intense anxiety of the candidates themselves, or if it was subtly, perhaps unconsciously, reinforced by an examination culture that implicitly valued extreme caution, conformity, and an almost ritualistic attention to detail. Even the food you ate during the preparation period, and if you had any choice in the matter for the meager rations brought into the cell, would be scrutinized. This is a quirky and rather revealing tidbit about the pervasiveness of these beliefs. Some candidates would religiously avoid eating certain foods if their names sounded like unlucky words. Pears, apple were a common dietary taboo, because ling sounds identical to the word for separation. Eating a pear could, therefore, imply separation from success, separation from your family in a bad way, or separation from the coveted official post. So, no matter how much you might crave a juicy pear, it's off the menu until the exams are well and truly over and your name is safely on that pass list. Better to stick to foods with auspicious-sounding names, or at least neutral ones. If you accidentally transgressed, uttered a forbidden word, or performed a taboo action, a fresh wave of anxiety would wash over you. You might mentally recite a protective charm, or perhaps discreetly spit 3 times, a common folk remedy for warding off bad luck, hoping to neutralize the negative influence. The mental energy expended on monitoring your speech, your actions, and your environment for these potential pitfalls is enormous. A constant background hum of self-censorship and ritualized caution. It's another layer of stress on an already overloaded system. But for you, and thousands like you, it feels like a necessary shield, a set of rules that offers a fragile sense of control in a process that feels overwhelmingly arbitrary and dependent on the whims of fate. The prayers you offered to the deities in Section 5 might even include a blanket apology for any unknown taboos you've inadvertently broken, hoping to understand the pressure you're under, as if the living competition, the crushing pressure, and your own hyper-vigilant mind weren't enough to contend with. There's another layer of unseen occupants in these ancient examination compounds. The ghosts, yes, you heard that right. Spirit of unsuccessful candidate. The failures past are widely believed to linger within these imposing walls, particularly in the dead of night, when your own resolve is at its lowest ebb. Your cramped cell, already a crucible of anxiety from Section 4, now also feels like it might have a few non-paying, spectral tenants. These examination halls, some of which have stood for centuries, have witnessed unimaginable waves of human emotion. Think of the sheer concentration of hope, ambition, fervent prayer, bitter disappointment, and soul-crushing despair that has soaked into these bricks and timbers over countless exam cycles. It's a mainstream historical fact that belief in ghosts, especially the spirits of those who died with unresolved grievances, known as Yuan Gin, was deeply ingrained in Chinese folk religion. And what greater grievance could there be than to pour your entire life into the singular pursuit of the imperial dream, only to have it snatched away, or to die within these very walls from illness, exhaustion, or even by your own hand in a moment of utter desolation? Their spirits, it said, remain tethered to the place of their greatest striving and ultimate sorrow. So, as darkness cloaks the Wigongjuan, and the only sounds are the sighing of the wind through the eaves, the distant cough of another scholar, or the scuttling of unseen creatures, your imagination, already primed by the taboo terrors discussed in Section 7, you are definitely not saying the G word out loud, can easily run wild. That sudden cold spot in your cell, not just a draft surely? That faint whisper you thought you heard, too soft to be your neighbor, perhaps a spectral lament. The way your brush seemed to roll ever so slightly on the plank desk when you were certain you'd left it still. You're trying to concentrate on the finer points of fiscal policy during the Han Dynasty, but you can't shake the feeling that your invisible cellmate, let's call him Scholar Zhang from the class of 1692, failed tragically due to a misplaced character, keeps sighing dramatically every time you make an assertion. Talk about a tough and rather deceased crowd. These aren't just generic spooky ghosts. They are scholar ghosts, and their motivations are as varied as the candidates themselves. Some are merely sorrowful, their ethereal forms replaying their moments of failure. Others are said to be bitter and resentful, perhaps even malicious, jealous of those who still have a chance at the success that eluded them. They might try to distract you, to cloud your thoughts, to whisper incorrect answers, or even, in the more lurid tales, attempt to swap your brilliant essay with a page of nonsense. You wouldn't mind a little ghostly help naturally, as long as it came in from a successful scholar ghost looking to pay it forward, but a ghost who failed miserably and now haunts the latrine block with bad poetry. Less helpful. Thank you very much. The fear of these spectral interferences is very real. You might find yourself offering silent, placating words or redoubling your mental prayers to Wen Chang Di Jun, and especially to figures like Guan Yu whose righteous martial power was also believed to offer protection against malevolent spirits. You grip that tiny amulet, hidden in your robe, a little tighter, hoping its blessed properties extend to the paranormal. Some candidates were known to try and maintain a state of utmost mental purity and Confucian righteousness, believing that such a virtuous aura would naturally repel unhappy or evil spirits. Folklorists and historians continue to explore whether the prevalence of ghost stories, specifically tied to examination halls, primarily served as a vital psychological outlet for the candidates' overwhelming anxieties, a tangible way to personify their deep-seated fears of failure and the crushing weight of expectation, or if these tales perhaps reflected genuinely perceived paranormal experiences, which were then significantly amplified and shaped by the uniquely stressful, isolating, and historically charged environment of the Kikeju. Did your in-pot just wobble on its own, or was it an ethereal nudge from a disgruntled spirit who took issue with your interpretation of a passage from the Great Learning? You decide it's probably best not to argue back, just in case. Adding another layer to this spectral tapestry is the quirky and somewhat unsettling tidbit about ghost markets. Whispers and folktales sometimes described ethereal bazaars, supposedly held in the dead of night, near or even within the examination grounds. At these ghostly gatherings, spectral scholars were said to trade in ghostly examination essays, perhaps crib notes from the other side, or offer supernatural advice on exam strategies, naturally for a price to be paid in the spirit world, like offerings of spirit money or vows to perform rituals in their name. The idea of spectral scholars still obsessing over essay formats and classical allusions even in the afterlife is both comical and deeply melancholic. Certain cells within the compound might even develop reputations. Cell number 74 in the third row. Oh, that's where Scholar Bai hung himself after failing for the 10th time. Definitely bad vibes. Probably best to request a transfer if you're assigned that one. Cell number 108, however, is where the future Grand Secretary Liu supposedly had a vision of Kuising. That one's got to be lucky. You hope your own randomly assigned cubicle doesn't have too notorious a spectral history. The sounds you heard earlier, the ones you diligently tried to interpret as omens in Section 6, now take on a more sinister possibility. Was that creak just the old timbers settling, or was it a ghostly footstep? Was that rustle of paper the wind, or a spirit leafing through your notes? The line between a natural occurrence and a supernatural manifestation becomes terrifyingly thin when you're alone, exhausted, and desperate in the haunted heart of the examination machine, with the very air in your cell practically humming with the ghostly energy of failures past, as we shivered through in Section 8, and your mind already a finely tuned instrument for detecting the faintest omen or adhering to the strictest taboo. It's only natural that you'd want something more tangible to cling to. Abstract fears and hopes are one thing, but a physical object, something you can touch, something you've imbued with protective power or the essence of good fortune, that's a different level of comfort. So hidden from the prying eyes of the guards, you secretly carry your talismans and perform your small, almost imperceptible rituals, all in a desperate bid to sway fate just a little more in your favor. Charms are as varied as the scholars themselves, but many fall into familiar categories. Perhaps the most common are religious amulets, often obtained from a bustling temple dedicated to Wenchang Dijun, or another helpful deity from your personal pantheon. Remember those earnest prayers from Section 5. These might be small slips of yellow paper, yellow being an imperial and auspicious color, bearing carefully calligraphed characters for luck, Ri Fu Fu, success, Gi Shang Gong, pass with distinction, or even the name of a specific god. Sometimes these Ia Fu, these paper talismans, are folded into intricate, symbolic shapes, like tiny boats to carry you over the sea of examinations, or cranes for longevity and wisdom. You've got one such prayer to Wenchang, meticulously folded into an origami shaped so minuscule it could probably take up residence in a flea's waistcoat, all carefully stitched into the inner lining of your worn tunic. If a guard were to somehow spot it, you'd have to feign utter surprise and perhaps claim it's a revolutionary new form of highly advanced and very personal lint. Beyond paper charms, some candidates might carry tiny carved figurines, a miniature likeness of Qing, fierce and ready to bestow literary brilliance, or a smooth flat pebble engraved with an auspicious symbol, perhaps a tiny carp craft from wood or jade, symbolizing the common fish that, through great effort and perseverance, leaps over the mythical dragon gate to become a powerful dragon, the ultimate metaphor for success in the examinations. Sometimes it's not a representation of a deity, but a fragment of a sacred text, a powerful sutra, or a few potent characters from a classic copied onto a diminutive scroll and kept close to the heart. The use of these paper talismans, often issued by Taoist priests or obtained from Buddhist temples, bearing specific calligraphy and sacred symbols, was a widespread practice in traditional Chinese society, a trusted method for seeking divine protection and good fortune in all sorts of challenging endeavors. And the imperial exams were arguably one of the most challenging of all. Then there are the more personal, sentimental items. That chipped inkstone we've mentioned, the one you mentioned, used when you aced that practice exam. It's not just a tool, it's a reservoir of past success, a comforting reminder that you always can do this. Maybe your mother tied a red silk thread, red being the undisputed champion color of luck and prosperity, around your wrist before you left home, hidden now beneath your sleeve. Or perhaps you carry a single smooth stone you picked up at a particularly auspicious feeling moment on your journey to the capital. Its coolness in your sweaty palm is a small point of focus in the overwhelming stress. Peachwood charms are also popular, as peachwood is traditionally believed to have strong properties for warding off evil spirits, a particularly comforting thought given the ghostly company you suspect you're keeping. Of course, all these items are strictly forbidden within the examination compound. Discovery could lead to accusations of cheating, as a charm could easily be mistaken for a cleverly disguised crib note. So, concealment is an art form. Charms are sewn into hidden seams, tucked into the thick soles of cloth shoes, braided into the hair, if your hairstyle allows, or, for the truly daring, perhaps even held in the mouth during the initial search, to be discreetly retrieved later. Of being caught with your lucky charm adds yet another layer to your already overburdened psyche. Alongside these tangible objects are the small private rituals you perform, almost unconsciously at times, before you begin writing each day, or before tackling a particularly daunting question. You might arrange your brushes, inkstone, and water dropper in a very specific, unvarying order, your own personal Yi Feng Shui for academic success. Perhaps you tap your brush handle on the desk 3 times for the primary deities, Wenchang, Qing, Zhu Yai, twice for your ancestors, whose hopes rest on your shoulders, and maybe once for that surprisingly bold rat. That seems to be your only consistent non-spectral companion in this cell. Every little acknowledgement helps. Write. You might find yourself always starting to write from a particular corner of the page, or mentally reciting a short, auspicious phrase before your brush touches paper. Some scholars might even subtly try to face a direction they deem lucky while composing their thoughts. It's a quirky but telling tidbit that some candidates might have carried a few grains of what was known as clever rice. Gi Kong Ming, Wa. This was usually rice that had been offered at a shrine to Wen Chang Dijun. The belief was that by consuming these grains, or even just keeping them close, some of the deity's wisdom and intellectual acuity would be transferred to the scholar. The morning of the first day of exams, your mother might have insisted you eat a specific breakfast, perhaps dumplings shaped like silver ingots for wealth and success, or long noodles for a long life and smooth passage through the trials. Felt less like a scholar ready for intellectual battle, and more like a walking, talking good luck piggy bank, about to be mentally shaken until all the knowledge and lucky food came out. Scholarly debate continues on whether the primary function of these personal charms and rituals was genuinely rooted in a deep-seated supernatural belief, providing what candidates felt was actual divine intervention, or if they served more as crucial psychological anchors. Did these practices offer a much-needed sense of comfort, a feeling of perceived control, and a way to manage overwhelming anxiety in a high-stakes, notoriously unpredictable, and often terrifyingly arbitrary environment? Whatever the underlying mechanism, for you, sitting in that cell, the weight of your family's hopes pressing down, the silent presence of these little tokens, and the quiet repetition of these minor rites provide a fragile thread of reassurance, a secret conversation with fate in the daunting silence of the examination hall. Now let's drift into a murkier, more desperate corner of the examination experience, a shadowy world where the immense pressure we talked about back in Section 2 pushes some of your fellow candidates beyond fervent prayers and lucky charms, detailed in Sections 5 and 9, and into the perilous realm of cheating. You, of course, are a virtuous scholar, head filled only with Confucian classics and noble aspirations, but you've heard the whispers, you've seen the furtive glances, and you understand, even if you don't condone, the crushing desperation that might lead someone down this risky path, when your entire future, your family's honor, and years of agonizing study hang in the balance. The temptation to find an illicit edge can become almost unbearable. The methods employed are as ingenious as they are audacious. The most common, perhaps, involves smuggled crib notes known as yizai. These aren't your lazy classmates' scribbles on a palm. We're talking about miniature masterpieces of clandestine calligraphy, entire Confucian classics, or model essays painstakingly transcribed onto impossibly thin slips of paper or silk, sometimes no larger than a fingernail, characters so tiny they'd require the eyesight of a hawk and the steady hand of a neurosurgeon to decipher, let alone write. Some of these crib notes are so small, they make modern microfiche look like a highway billboard. These illicit treasures might be sewn into the multiple layers of a scholar's gown, hidden within the hollowed-out shaft of a brush, concealed in the thick sole of a shoe, or even baked into the middle of a seemingly innocent food item brought into the cell. The sheer effort and risk involved in preparing and smuggling these materials speak volumes about the stakes. Then there's the bolder, and far more expensive, option of impersonation, or kaidi en kong. A struggling but less talented scholar from a wealthy family might hire a more brilliant, but poorer scholar to take the examination in his place. This requires elaborate deception, a network of contacts, and nerves of steel from both parties. Imagine the conversation. Yes, esteemed examiner. I realize I appeared to be a stout gentleman of 50 with a distinguished gray beard during the first session. Today, for the second session, I am embracing a more youthful, slender, clean-shaven aesthetic. It's called scholarly versatility. The penalties, if caught, were, naturally, catastrophic for everyone involved. Other methods include trying to prearrange signals with someone outside the compound, or, more ambitiously, attempting to bribe an examiner or a clerk, a truly dangerous game. As the Qing government, keenly aware that the legitimacy of its entire bureaucracy rested on the perceived fairness of the Qi, implemented incredibly strict measures and severe punishments to combat corruption. We're talking public humiliation, a lifetime ban from any future examinations, which was tantamount to social and professional death for an aspiring scholar, brutal canings, lengthy imprisonment, and for those involved, organized cheating rings or egregious cases of corruption, even the grim possibility of execution. The shame brought upon one's family would be indelible, a stain lasting for generations. Yet, even in this treacherous domain of illicit activity, superstition doesn't entirely abandon the desperate scholar. In fact, it often takes on new, twisted forms. A candidate resorting to cheating might still offer prayers, perhaps not to the sternly righteous Wen Chang Dijun for inspiration, maybe to a more obscure deity believed to be sympathetic to tricksters, or perhaps they'd focus their pleas on Wen Chang's mercy, hoping he'll look the other way just this once in time. It's a bit like robbing a bank and fervently praying the security cameras malfunction, while also promising to donate a small portion of the loot to the local temple restoration fund. They might have lucky tools for cheating, a particular tiny brush used for illicit transcriptions that has successfully evaded detection before, or a specific way of folding their crib notes that they believe makes them invisible to the guards. Omens become doubly significant. A near discovery during the search might be interpreted as a warning to be even more careful, or a sign that their protective deities are slacking on the job. The irony is palpable, relying on the whims of fortune and supernatural favor, even as you actively engage in rule-breaking. A quirky, though perhaps not surprising, tidbit is that some cheaters might try to enlist supernatural aid, specifically for their illicit endeavors, rather than just hoping their general-purpose lucky charm from Section 9 works. They might seek out or create charms specifically designed to confuse guards or cloud examiners' judgment. There were even hushed rumors of desperate individuals bribing less scrupulous temple attendants or rogue Taoist priests to perform rituals aimed at blinding the examiners to their hidden notes or making fair guards overlook them during searches. Historians still debate the actual prevalence of cheating in the Qing examinations. Were the official government reports, which often detailed elaborate cheating schemes and stringent punishments, sometimes exaggerating the extent of the problem to justify even stricter controls and project an image of unwavering vigilance? Or does the surviving anecdotal evidence and the sheer ingenuity of the metas discovered only offer us a tantalizing glimpse, merely scratching the surface of a much wider, more deeply entrenched clandestine practice that many scholars simply got away with? For the scholar in the cell next to you, who perhaps has a miniature scroll hidden in his left shoe, the fear of karmic retribution might also weigh heavily. Are the scholar ghosts, remember them from Section 8, observing his transgression with spectral disapproval? Will angering the righteous deities bring about an even worse fate than simply failing honestly? The mental gymnastics required to justify cheating while still trying to maintain some semblance of a scholar's ethical framework, all while under the shadow of severe punishment and supernatural disapproval, must have been exhausting. It's a testament to the crushing, all-consuming nature of the imperial dream that some were willing to risk everything, their reputation, their freedom, even their lives, and perhaps their immortal souls, for just a chance at grasping it. Beyond the ghosts, the omens, and the carefully observed taboos, another subtle but pervasive layer of superstition, dictates your anxieties and influences your choices. The perceived power of numbers. In the traditional Chinese worldview, numbers aren't just cold, abstract quantifiers. They pulse with inherent qualities, with auspicious or inauspicious energies, often derived from their sounds. Those pesky homophones again, a recurring theme from Section 7, or their associations within classical texts like the Relaxation, the ancient Turok of Qing Dynasty. This belief in numerology, a mainstream historical fact, shaped everything from the grand design of imperial palaces to the most personal decisions in everyday life, and the examination halls were certainly not immune to its subtle hand. You find yourself acutely aware of numbers in a way you perhaps never were before. Take your cell assignment, for instance. When the stern-faced clerk barks out a number and a guard gestures you toward your designated brick slot, your heart might leap or sing depending on the digits involved. If you're assigned cell 38, you might feel a small flutter of hope. 3. Gua. Gas. Ma. Can sound like life, or to generate. Kayas. 8. Jibwa. Famously sounds like prosperity or wealth. Why? Life prosperity sounds like a recipe for success. But heaven forbid you're assigned cell 44. Oh dear. 4. Greasy, as we've nervously established, is the homophone for death. So cell 44, double death. You might fleetingly consider asking the guard, the one whose glare could curdle milk, if cell 88, double prosperity, let's get this party started, happens to be available for a scholar with a sudden, overwhelming aversion to duplicate mortality. You wisely decide against it. This numerical anxiety extends to dates and times. Remember back in Section 3, when you were planning your journey. You or your anxious family might have consulted an almanac to pick an auspicious day to depart, one whose numbers added up to a favorable sum, or which didn't clash with your own birth date numerology. Now, within the compound, if you have any say in it, which you usually don't, you might subconsciously prefer to start writing a particularly crucial essay at an hour deemed lucky. You might even count the number of times a guard patrols past your cell in an hour. An auspicious count could be a fleeting reassurance, an inauspicious one, another small bob of worry. The number 9, WGE, is generally a powerhouse of good fortune. It's closely associated with the emperor and imperial power. The phrase 9-5, Yi Wao, derived from the Weijing, signifies the supreme and auspicious position of the sovereign. 9 also sounds like the word for long-lasting, Yi, implying endurance and permanence, perhaps the permanence of your success. There are 9 sections to an exam paper, or, if your perfectly structured essay naturally falls into 9 distinct arguments, you might feel a quiet sense of cosmic alignment. 6. Kwa, try, as it sounds like the word for a pleaser, as it sounds like the word for flowing or smooth. Wa, ri, suggesting a smooth, unimpeded path to glory. If your cell number is 68, that's smooth prosperity, not bad at all. Even the most mundane occurrences can be filtered through this numerological lens. A callback to the omen spotting frenzy of Section 6. You see a small flock of birds land on the roof opposite your cell. You count them automatically. 3. Magpies. A good, solid, life-affirming number. Relief washes over you. If there had been 4, well, you'd probably just quickly squint and decide one of them was a very small, unusually monochrome parrot until it flew away. The number of times you dip your brush, the number of characters in a particularly well-turned phrase, even the number of sips of water you take, your stressed mind might latch onto any of these. seeking patterns, seeking favorable numbers. Sinologists and cultural historians continue to debate the degree to which complex numerological calculations, such as those derived from sophisticated interpretations of the Jing or other specialized divination manuals, were actively and consciously employed by the average examination candidate under duress. Was it more a general, culturally ingrained reliance on the simpler homophonic associations for common numbers, like 4, 8, or 9, or were some scholars truly engaging in intricate numerical divination within their tiny cells? It's a quirky, though quite plausible, fringe tidbit that some candidates might develop highly personalized numerological systems. Beyond the generally accepted meanings, a scholar might consider a number like 7, which sometimes viewed negatively due to its association with ghosts, the 7th lunar month being Ghost Month, as intensely lucky if, for example, they were born on the 7th day of the month, or if a past personal triumph happened to involve that number. Their personal experience could override the common interpretation, creating a private lexicon of lucky and unlucky digits. So, while you might be dreading the number 4, the scholar in the next cell might have a fond attachment to it if his beloved grandmother was born on April 4th and always gave him lucky money. This constant, subtle awareness of numbers adds yet another layer of mental calculus to your already overloaded brain. You're trying to recall obscure historical precedents for your essay on tax reform, and simultaneously, a part of your mind is tabulating the number of coughs you hear from the next cell, wondering if it's an auspicious sequence. If your essay just naturally seems to divide itself into 8 coherent sections, a small smile might touch your lips. Perfect, auspicious. If it had stubbornly only yielded 7, you might have been sorely tempted to awkwardly shoehorn in an entirely unnecessary extra paragraph about the profound moral fortitude of some long-dead sage king, just to round it up to a luckier numerical total. The invisible hand of numerology is always there, gently nudging your thoughts, coloring your perceptions, and adding its own unique cadence to the rhythm of your anxiety. After a fitful night on your unforgiving wooden planks, perhaps disturbed by the ghostly sighs we discussed in Section 8 or the sheer discomfort of your cramped cell from Section 4, you awaken not to the gentle chirping of birds, but to the immediate pressing need to dissect the fleeting images that flickered through your exhausted mind. In the high-stakes environment of the imperial examinations, sleep offers little true respite. Instead, it becomes another arena for anxiety and another potential source of supernatural intelligence. Your dreams, those chaotic tapestries woven from stress, classical texts, and the day's anxieties, are scrutinized with the intensity of a scholar deciphering an ancient, cryptic oracle. Dream interpretation was no mere fancy in traditional China. It was a well-established practice, a mainstream historical fact. People from all walks of life consulted texts like the venerable Yu Gang Jimen or Ka the Duke of Zhou's interpretations of dreams, which provided extensive catalogues of symbols and their supposed prophetic meanings. The belief was that dreams could be messages from deities, perhaps Ren Chang Dijun himself, finally answering your prayers from Section 5, communications from ever-watchful ancestors, or even insights bubbling up from your own deeper spirit, offering clues about your impending fate. So, as you rub the sleep from your eyes, you frantically try to grasp the slippery tendrils of your nocturnal vision before they dissolve in the harsh light of day. Certain dream symbols would send a jolt of hope through your weary frame. Did you dream of flying or soaring effortlessly through the sky? This is a classic auspicious sign, symbolizing rising in rank, overcoming obstacles, and achieving great success. Perhaps you saw yourself adorned in official robes, receiving a weighty imperial seal, or reading a document that proclaimed your name. These are direct, almost literal, indications of passing the exams and embarking on a glorious official career. Dreaming of a dragon, that ultimate symbol of imperial power and good fortune, would be an incredibly potent omen, suggesting you were destined for the highest honors. Even seeing clear, flowing water, flowers in full bloom, or successfully climbing a steep mountain, or crossing a wide river could be interpreted as positive signs, purity of purpose, flourishing prospects, and purity, the triumphant overcoming of challenges. Conversely, other dream images could plunge you into a state of near despair. If you dreamt of falling, sinking into mud, or drowning, the symbolism was starkly negative: failure, being overwhelmed, and a descent into obscurity. One particularly dreaded dream was that of your teeth falling out. While interpretations could vary, it was commonly seen as a very bad omen, signifying loss, misfortune, or even the impending death of a relative, which, aside from the personal grief, would be a terrible distraction and potentially require you to withdraw from the exams for a mourning period. Dreaming of dirty or stagnant water, withered flowers, or losing your precious books, ink, or writing brushes would similarly fill you with dread, suggesting clouded prospects, fading hopes, or a fundamental inability to perform the scholarly tasks ahead. Being chased, trapped, or finding yourself in a burning building. Though fire could be ambiguous, sometimes purifying, often pointed to unresolved anxieties, insurmountable obstacles, or impending disaster. You wake up, heart still pounding, trying to piece together the narrative. There was a talking carp, you think, something about your stern third-grade calligraphy teacher finding fault with your brushstrokes, and for some reason, your trousers were inexplicably missing. You rack your brain. A talking carp could be good. Carp are auspicious, linked to perseverance and success. But the critical teacher and the missing trousers, that feels less promising. You're pretty sure the most reliable interpretation is that you desperately need more sleep and perhaps fewer of those slightly suspicious pickled vegetables your cousin packed for you before bed. The process of decoding is a delicate and often desperate art. You might try to apply the official meanings from dream manuals, but personal associations and current anxieties heavily color your interpretations. If a dream is ambiguous, you'll likely twist and turn its elements until you can wring some drop of hope from it. For example, you dreamt your teeth fell out, generally a terrible sign. But wait, in the dream, were they immediately replaced by tiny, gleaming golden ingots? Aha! Perhaps not a sign of loss, but of transformation, where an old, presumably less fortunate self is shed to make way for a new, successful, and prosperous one. Or just might be, you have some very peculiar and specific dental anxieties that have nothing to do with the exams. This is where a quirky but common folk practice might come into play. Vivid or nightmarish dream, one that felt heavy with ill omen. You might, if opportunity and privacy allowed, which is rare in the Rigonjuan, try to sell the dream. This involved verbally transferring the bad dream and its negative energy to an inanimate object, like a tree or a stone, or releasing it into flowing water, thereby neutralizing its power to harm you. It's a small ritual, a psychological sleight of hand, but in your anxious state, any action that promises to ward off bad luck feels worthwhile. Psychologists and cultural historians continue to debate how much these traditional dream interpretation systems genuinely alleviated the profound anxiety experienced by candidates by providing a structured framework for understanding these nocturnal visions, or conversely, Did they potentially exacerbate the stress by assigning definitive meanings to what are essentially the chaotic neural firings and random image collages of a mind under extreme pressure? If you were to discreetly mention your dream of flying to your neighbor in the next cell, assuming you could communicate without alerting the guards, you might feel a bond of shared hope. But if he then recounted his own dream of being relentlessly pursued by a giant, sentient examination paper with blood-red correction marks, you'd probably both just sink deeper into your individual anxieties. Best to keep your good omens to yourself and try to forget the bad ones as quickly as possible. Yet, as you dip your brush to begin the day's grueling work, the faint echo of that talking cart or the unsettling image of the missing trousers still lingers at the edge of your consciousness, another whisper in the symphony of superstitions that defines your examination ordeal. As you sit hunched in your cell, grappling with complex philosophical arguments and the lingering echoes of last night's anxiety-ridden dreams, which we just decoded or tried to in Section 12, even the simple act of eating becomes entangled in the intricate web of superstition. The food and drink consumed during the intense preparation period, and the meager rations provided within the examination compound itself, are scrutinized not just for sustenance, but for their hidden symbolic meanings, their potential to either bolster your chances or inadvertently sabotage them. Just like words and numbers, food items in Chinese culture often carry significance based on their names, shapes, or associations, a mainstream historical fact particularly evident during festivals, but equally applied to life-altering events like the Yukiju. In the months and weeks leading up to the exams, your family likely curated your diet with an eye toward maximum auspiciousness. Your meals might have become suspiciously heavy on certain ingredients. Walnuts, getao, are a prime example. Their uncanny resemblance to a miniature brain led to the widespread belief that eating them could boost intellect and memory. You've probably consumed enough walnuts to build a small nutty fortress, all while hoping your own head doesn't actually crack open from the effort, hopefully releasing brilliant insights. Not just more walnut fragments, longans, guangi, dragon eyes were another popular choice, invoking the power and imperial success associated with the mythical dragon. Wordplay, as always, is key. You might have been encouraged to eat spring onions, because biscom sounds exactly like the word for clever or intelligent. Gikrong, similarly, celery, kinki, might appear frequently on the menu, as Kuireng sounds like diligence, reinforcing the scholarly virtue of hard work. Consuming these foods wasn't just about nutrition. It was about symbolically ingesting the very qualities needed to succeed. Your pre-exam diet essentially becomes anything that sounds remotely like pass, smart, or get rich gloriously. Certain dishes gain prominence due to specific examination lore. Glutinous rice dumplings called izongzi, traditionally eaten during the Dragon Boat Festival, might be consumed even outside the festival season by hopeful candidates, because the word zhang sounds like zom, which means to hit the mark or to pass an exam, and fish, ri, is generally auspicious because it sounds like abundance or surplus, ryu, suggesting you'll have more than enough knowledge and luck. The carp, of course, holds special significance, representing the legendary leap over the Dragon Gate. Then there's the quirky regional tidbit. In some areas, scholars would make a point of eating pig's trotters, tourisms. Why? Because the word for trotter, Qing, is a crucial part of the four-character idiom Yuao Di Xian Bong Timing. The ultimate goal, to have one's name inscribed T On the golden list of successful candidates, you eat the trotter, you embody the trotter. Inscription, or so the hopeful logic goes. Just as important as eating the right foods is avoiding the wrong ones. The most notorious of these is the pear, which, as we learned in the taboo terrors of Section 7, sounds identical to separation. Eating a pear could symbolize separation from success, from your family, or from that coveted official post. Someone innocently offers you a slice of juicy pear. You likely recoil as if proffered a venomous snake. Get that delicious-looking symbol of potential career destruction away from me. You might be overreacting slightly. Yapta were also sometimes avoided, as the word could be associated with scoring 0 wingjan on a test, or simply seen as generally unlucky before an important undertaking. Though this varied by region, anything burned, broken, or imperfectly prepared would also be viewed with suspicion, a bad omen reflected in your food. Now, inside the cell, you have very little control over your meals. Guards deliver basic, bland rations, perhaps some steamed rice or buns, might be a few pieces of pickled vegetable, and tea or water. This lack of control becomes another source of anxiety. You eye the steamed bun suspiciously. Is it perfectly round and plump? Good sign symbolizing completeness. Is it slightly collapsed or misshapen? Potential deflation of hopes. Does it have an even, auspicious number of pleats? If it's a fancy bun, which is unlikely, quick, consult the mental numerology charts from Section 11. Eating, an act that should be simple refueling, becomes another stressful ritual of interpretation. If the guards happen to serve peers for some unfathomable reason, you can imagine the collective wave of panic that would ripple through the cell. Welfare candidates or those with connections might have attempted to arrange for better or more auspicious food to be brought in, perhaps during the preparation phase or lodging before entering the compound. But once sealed inside, everyone was largely subject to the same monotonous, symbolically ambiguous fare. This difference highlights the subtle ways social status could still play a role, even in the supposedly egalitarian space of the examination cell. Historians of the examination cell, food and culture continue to debate the underlying purpose of these complex dietary practices. To what extent were they driven by a genuine, deeply held belief in the symbolic efficacy of these foods, that eating walnuts, truly a maiden, you smarter, or avoiding pears, actively preventing failure? Or did these traditions function more as comfort food rituals, providing essential psychological reassurance, a tangible link to family support and hopeful traditions? During a period of intense isolation, pressure, and uncertainty, for you, carefully picking at your bland rice and scrutinizing a suspiciously shaped pickled radish, the distinction is less important than the hope that you've somehow ingested enough good fortune and avoided enough bad luck to see you through. Every bite is a gamble, every sip a potential omen. The final brushstroke has been laid, the last essay painstakingly completed. The gates of the examination compound creak open, and you stumble out, blinking in the unfiltered sunlight, a creature released from the dim, scholarly tomb of your cell, that delightful abode from Section 4. The physical relief is immense: fresh air, space to stretch, the ability to walk more than 3 paces in a straight line. But as the immediate euphoria of liberation subsides, it's replaced by a new, and in some ways even more insidious, form of torment. The agonizing wait for the results. You've mentally rewritten your essay on the ethical implications of the ethical implications. Mandate of heaven so many times during those sleepless nights that you could now probably debate Mencius himself to a standstill, or at least bore him into submission. This period of suspense can stretch for what feels like an eternity. Weeks, sometimes even months. depending on the level of the examination and the number of candidates. The journey home, if you're from a distant province, or even just the return to your temporary lodgings in the capital, is a blur of exhaustion and an burgeoning dread. Every bump in the road, every snippet of overheard conversation seems to echo the questions now screaming in your mind. Did I correctly interpret that obscure classical allusion? Was my calligraphy neat enough, or did it look like a drunken spider had a party on my paper? Did I say too much about the former dynasty's failings, or not enough? Self-doubt, that constant companion, now takes center stage, performing an endless, anxiety-fueled monologue, and as the days crawl by, all those superstitious behaviors you so carefully cultivated, the omen spotting from Section 6, the taboo adherence from Section 7, the numerological calculations from Section 11, don't just fade away. If anything, they intensify. Now that your active part in the process is over, the feeling of helplessness can be overwhelming, making you cling even tighter to any perceived means of influencing fate or divining the outcome. Every twitch of your eyelid, every chance encounter on the street, every dream that flits through your restless sleep, remember those from Section 12, is analyzed with renewed, almost frantic urgency. Was that magpie that landed on your windowsill this morning a definitive sign of good news, or just a bird looking for a crumb? You find yourself revisiting temples, perhaps the shrine of Wenchang Dijun or Kui Sing, your celestial allies from Section 5. Your prayers even more fervent than before. You might make new, more extravagant vows, promising larger donations to the temple, committing to acts of charity, or even vowing to undertake a pilgrimage if your name appears on that coveted list. Your lucky charms from Section 9, those little secret comforts, are probably getting a lot of handling. They're familiar textures, a small anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Your family, of course, is riding this emotional roller coaster right alongside you. Their anxiety often mirrors, and sometimes even amplifies, your own. Your normally stoic father might be seen muttering to himself, or your mother might develop a sudden, intense interest in consulting every fortune-teller, monk, or wandering wise woman who passes through the village. The whole household can become a tinderbox of nerves. A sudden loud noise, or an accidentally dropped bowl, a terrible omen, could trigger a disproportionate wave of panic. They're also being extra careful about the food they serve you, diligently avoiding those inauspicious pairs, as per Section 13, and perhaps doubling down on clever spring onions and success fish. Fascinating, if somewhat stressful, worky tidbit, that some particularly well-prepared, or perhaps just highly superstitious, families would have 2 complete sets of clothing laid out for you on the day the results were anticipated. One would be a set of fine new robes, bright and celebratory, ready for the joyous parades and feasting that would follow a pass. The other, a plain, dark, inconspicuous outfit, suitable for a swift, quiet departure from the city or a discreet retreat into seclusion, should your name be absent from the list. Talk about planning for every eventuality, and talk about pressure. Rumors fly thick and fast. Someone heard from a cousin whose friend knows a clerk in the examination office that the results will be posted next Tuesday. No, wait, another source insists it will be the week after, on a day with an auspicious number. The speculation about who might have done well, who seemed confident, who looked utterly broken upon exiting the compound, is endless and mostly unhelpful. The waiting period is so protracted, you start to suspect the examiners are grading your papers on a remote, mist-shrouded mountain peak, possibly guarded by a council of philosophical snow leopards, and are only dispatching the results back to civilization via an extremely slow, albeit very determined, tortoise. announcement of the examination results was, in reality, a major public spectacle. The lists of successful candidates, the golden Bu, or more commonly, a red paper list, would be posted in a prominent public place. Gather a sea of hopeful candidates, anxious families, and curious onlookers, all craning their necks, hearts pounding, for that first glimpse of the names that would change lives forever. The ensuing scenes could range from wild, tearful elation and chaotic celebrations to utter, crushing despair and public displays of grief. Historians and psychologists, who specialize in periods of intense waiting and uncertainty, continue to analyze the coping mechanisms from eras like this. Did all these various superstitious behaviors adopted by candidates and their families, the constant omen reading, the frantic prayers, the strict taboo adherence, more effectively manage the corrosive anxiety of the unknown? Or did they, paradoxically, perhaps amplify it by creating even more potential points of perceived failure, a misread sign, a broken taboo, an unlucky dream, during that agonizingly suspenseful interim before the truth was finally revealed? For you, caught in this limbo, each passing day is a trial, a tightrope walk between hope and fear, as you await the judgment that will define your future. The day of reckoning finally dawns, heavy with the accumulated anxieties of weeks, months, or even years of waiting. That agonizing period we just navigated in Section 14. You join the immense, surging crowd gathered before the official notice. Bored, a sea of pale faces, trembling hands, and whispered prayers. The air crackles with an almost unbearable tension. Then officials emerge, and with great ceremony, the long sheets of red paper, often inscribed with characters in gold or black ink, are unfurled and posted. This is the Ri Jianbun, the golden list, though red was the more common color, and on it are the names that will soar, and by their absence, the names that will plummet. Your heart is a wild drum against your ribs as you push forward, scanning, searching for that familiar sequence of characters that formed your name. And then you see it, or you don't. Let's imagine, for a moment, that your eyes lock onto your name, in surprisingly legible calligraphy, nestled among the fortunate few. A wave of dizziness, of disbelief, then pure, unadulterated elation washes over you. You've done it. That imperial dream from Section 1, the one that fueled countless sleepless nights and years of sacrifice, is no longer a distant fantasy. It's real. You try to maintain a dignified composure, as befits a newly minted Juren, or even a Yinshi, depending on the exam, but mostly you want to shout, to leap, to do a series of cartwheels, and immediately commission a lifetime supply of the finest incense for Wenchang Dijun and every other deity you can remember from Section 5. The world explodes into noise and color. Your family, if present, erupts in joyful tears. Friends and well-wishers surround you. The future, once a terrifying void, now stretches before you, bright with promise, official robes, prestige, the chance to serve, the ability to honor your ancestors, and provide for your loved ones. Those lucky charms from Section 9, clearly potent. Those auspicious omens you spotted in Section 6, undeniably true. The lucky foods from Section 13, the meticulous avoidance of taboos in Section 7, even that slightly unsettling dream of the talking carp from Section 12. It all worked. Your belief in these subtle forces is not just affirmed, it's powerfully reinforced. But even in success, new anxieties and superstitions quickly take root. You are now a target for jealousy, both human and spiritual. You must remain humble, make good on any vows you made during those desperate prayers, and perhaps adopt new rituals to protect your newfound good fortune. If this was a provincial success, the even more daunting metropolitan exams loom ahead, bringing a fresh wave of pressure. Your anxiety simply gets a promotion, dressed in finer robes. You meticulously thank the deities, perhaps commissioning a new tablet for the local temple, and continue to be wary of unlucky numbers or ill omens, lest your luck turn. Now, let's imagine the other outcome. You scan the list once, twice, a dozen times. Your characters are not there. Your name is absent. The vibrant calligraphy blurs before your tear-filled eyes. A cold fist clenches around your heart. The imperial dream shatters into a million pieces. The weight of your family's sacrifices. Section 2. The years of study. The public expectation. It all comes crashing down. It's time to activate Operation Inconspicuous Exit Strategy. Perhaps, donning those somber clothes, your family pragmatically prepared. As per Section 14 quirky tidbit, the shame and despair can be all-consuming. The world, moments ago bright with tension, now seems gray and muted. In this bitter aftermath, superstitions offer both a scapegoat and a perverse kind of comfort. Clearly, you must have broken a critical taboo. That unlucky number 4 that kept cropping up, Section 11, was a dire warning you failed to properly counteract. Those malevolent scholar ghosts from Section 8 finally got their spectral revenge. Panchan, your prayers insufficient, or a rival candidate's lucky charm was simply more powerful. You replay every moment, searching for the misstep, the offended deity, the ignored omen. It was that pear you accidentally ate, or you forgot to tap your inkstone the correct number of times. The path forward is grim. Do you endure another cycle of study, another round of anxiety, another few years haunted by the fear of becoming one of those lingering spirits yourself? The thought is exhausting, yet the alternative, abandoning the only path to honor and advancement you've ever known, is almost equally terrifying. If you do decide to try again, your superstitious practices might become even more deeply entrenched as you seek to rectify past spiritual errors. It's a quirky and rather poignant detail that some believed if a truly deserving candidate was unjustly failed, their aggrieved spirit, or that of a protective ancestor, might try to make this injustice known, perhaps by causing minor supernatural disturbances for the examiners, until the imbalance was, in some way, recognized or rectified, even if only in local lore. Regardless of whether your name appeared on that red list or not, the intense experience of the Keiju often solidifies a reliance on these extra-rational beliefs. Success becomes proof of their efficacy. Failure suggests they were improperly applied, insufficient, or that more powerful negative forces were at play. Historians and sociologists continue to debate the long-term psychological impact of the examination system on Qing literati, particularly whether repeated failure fostered a kind of philosophical resilience or stoic acceptance in some individuals, or if for many, it led to more pervasive and entrenched patterns of anxiety, deep-seated fatalism, and an enduring reliance on superstition that would color their lives and decisions for years to come, regardless of the career paths they eventually followed. The what-ifs linger, a constant reminder of the thin veil between triumph and despair, and the myriad unseen forces you believe govern that delicate balance. And so, your journey through the hopes and fears of a Qing Dynasty scholar, a path paved with ink, anxiety, and a universe of whispered beliefs, draws towards its close. Whether you emerged triumphant, ready to don the robes of an official, or stumbled away, dreams deferred, the experience would have marked you, shaped you, and perhaps left you forever listening for the subtle messages of the cosmos, forever weighing the unseen influences on your earthly fortunes. The world of the Qing scholar, with its towering ambitions and its equally profound anxieties, begins to fade now. The scent of old books and nervous sweat, the scratching of brushes, the silent prayers whispered in tiny, cramped cells, let them all recede like the tide. The weight of expectation, the fear of failure, the desperate search for meaning in every falling leaf or flickering candle flame, these were the burdens of another time, another life. You are here, now, in the quiet comfort of your own space, far removed from those ancient examination halls. The only test before you is to allow your mind to soften, to release the day's tensions, and to drift into a peaceful, untroubled sleep. Let the anxieties of those long ago scholars serve only as a reminder of the human heart's enduring capacity for hope, for fear, and for the fascinating, often bewildering ways we try to make sense of our journey through the world. Breathe deeply and let the quietude embrace you. The whispers of the past are now just stories, and the only character that matters now is you, resting and finding peace